Ja, good morning to everyone. Baie welkom. Klomp ou bekendes, is goed om te sien. Die inisiatief van hierdie webinar kom van Agri af. And the mission of Agri is basically to design and find solutions to unlock the X factor. Now, when you talk about compliance to regulations, it's never a popular topic. And many people, and many of us, actually doubted sometimes the necessity of the value it's adding to it. But it is what it is, and it is necessary. And it's important that we know what is going on. From an agri perspective, we've identified a critical challenge that's applicable to the industry, and the strict requirements, and the big thing is the general unawareness in the sector of what the implications could be. So the objective of this session is basically to give context, insights, and some solutions for affected parties. So the background to this is also the grey listing of South Africa via the Financial Action Task Force in February 23. So it's stringent regulations, and that's the background to it. From an agenda perspective, I think I'm very happy with the lineup of speakers that we have. First of all, Terry Booysen as a leading authority on corporate governance, François Meintjes from Moonstone on compliance, and Julie Amley from Lemonaide, sharing effective ways how to address verification processes. So I will, and then I will use a few minutes just to talk about in terms of the bigger solution that we have available. So, and we are doing this webinar with partnerships. AgriX with Moonstone, that is, well, I think it's from 2000, it was founded in 2000, providing extensive services in the financial services industry. And now with the implication of the compliance issues, actually moving into the non-financial sector to make their services available, and then Lemonaide also from a verification perspective. So they are partners, so we have signed agreements with them to assist role players and affected parties in the agri industry. And then obviously Terry from the Corporate Governance Research Institute, we are very glad to have Terry with us. And I think I would like to start and introduce Terry. Like I said, he's absolutely a leading authority on corporate governance. I've co-founded the CGF Research Institute, and he's an executive director, shareholder, and they specialize in all forms of research on governance, which in turn reinforces in terms of the value proposition they can take out to companies. They've developed a very impressive corporate governance framework that is available, that's world-class, no competitors available like that, and that's very comprehensive, and that might be a topic for another discussion. Now, Terry is accredited podium speaker. He published numerous articles. He is active on CEO forums, on television, radio. In 2013, he was recognized by a worldwide who's who organization for his business accomplishments, knowledge on governance. So he's a guest lecturer at universities, business schools, business forums. So if we talk about governance and the relevance of governance and sustainability, I've no doubt in my mind that we couldn't have asked for anybody better than Terry. And Terry, we really appreciate your time and your willingness to participate, to share with us your perspectives on governance and sustainability. So appreciate and looking forward to your contribution.
Warm words of introduction. I almost don't recognize myself when you say such kind things, but I suppose the facts are the facts and the truth is the truth. So thank you. You know, as Peter contacted me a couple of weeks ago about this particular event, I jumped at the opportunity for a number of reasons. Probably one of the reasons is because, you know, as we've dealt with this particular topic for some 23 years now, notably, we do not see, you know, the smaller type organizations actually, you know, doing the governance in the way in which they're compelled to do. So typically, the clients that we interact with would be your listed companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, as well as a number of, you know, large organizations overseas. So we deal with many types of organizations. And if I cast my mind back to any of the engagements I've had in South Africa, as well as parts of the continent, I don't think, with the rare exception of maybe one or two, there's ever been an occasion to talk to an audience of forums such as this in the agri sector. And I think that's where perhaps we should start, to say, you know, a lot of organizations don't realize the gravitas of governance. They don't necessarily have the right controls and measures in place to be able to compete in a similar way to what the blue chip companies are doing on the stock exchange, that being from a governance point of view. Now, let me qualify that quickly. The first thing is that, you know, the more traditional organizations, such as those on the stock exchange, with more formalized boards of directors, are very much aware of, you know, all the laws, rules, and regulations. They've got risk registers, they've got regulatory risk registers, they've got gap analysis registers purely on risk and all the different permutations of risk. And typically, you don't find the same kind of approach in a non-listed organization in the way that I've made reference to. So when I go and talk to boards of directors at a kind of less formal, less structured type of organization, you can see today, as I was looking at some of the presenters now, I immediately realized I stand out because I'm wearing a collar and a tie, and nogal for Cape Town. I mean, that's saying something. But the rest of you are all looking nice and relaxed and casual, and you're sitting with lovely backgrounds of green and agri kind of stuff. And here you've got this corporate guy talking about corporate governance, and that perhaps is the first way in which we begin to differentiate the way I would see governance and the way in which we would approach governance in more, you know, formal ways, as opposed to how approach it in your way, in your environment. So there's something we should start with by saying, when we talk about the sustainability of an organization, the first thing we need to appreciate is that the organization itself, whether it is a profit organization, public, private, non-profit, all of those organizations, certainly from a South African point of view, are bound by the Constitution. All right. Now, that sounds a little bit offbeat when I say it that way. But when I talk about the Constitution of our country, the Constitution makes it very clear what is required to sustain our country. All right. The people shall govern is how it's designed. And when you talk about how the people govern, you've got to take that to the different permutations, the different levels. If I take it just one step down and I start talking about the people in an organization, whether those people are, you know, collated on a structured or an unstructured way, profit or non-profit, they shall govern. And the question remains then, how do we govern? What in fact we mean by governing? And perhaps that's where things start going a little bit gray for many leaders of organizations, particularly those that are maybe not as formalized in the way in which they go about running their businesses. So from the Constitution, the country Constitution, the very first part that I would address in an organization is the constitution of the organization. Now, that is typically something that most less structured organizations tend to think about. In other words, I'm talking about the article in the memorandum of incorporation of the organization, also known as the MOI. And when you look at that particular document, particularly with the kind of the deep insight that we've had to these documents for many, many years, you can see why governance fails in so many organizations, because starting at the top of the organization, not necessarily the actual people, but the documentation in the organization is less than desirable. The documents themselves are not written with proper purpose, with proper intent. They're not written to ensure that the leaders are all pulling in the same direction. And when you don't have those documents all aligned, you know you've got trouble on its way. You know that there will be dysfunction. So if I talk to those top maybe key documents of an organization, we have to remind ourselves that in South Africa, there's something called the King Codes. Now, I'm not going to lecture you on the King Codes. And yes, they have applicability in our organizations, all of our organizations. But what most people don't realize, particularly the board of directors, is that this particular code, this particular set of governance principles has become mandatory. It's part of our common law in South Africa. Said differently, it's part of the rules and the laws and the regulations. It's the jurisprudence in which we operate, which most boards of directors and owners of companies don't realize. And it is mandatory. It's a legal requirement. So we start off by looking at just those principles, which perhaps are more than principles in themselves, and ask the question, how are we actually practicing good governance by way of these principles? So if I talk about sustainability, most people may think that I'm talking firstly about the environmental sustainability. Well, I am, but I'm also not. There are two types of sustainability we can be talking about. The sustainability in the way in which you yourself are structured as a group of people in the organization. How sustainable are you as a group of leaders in your company? Have you ensured that you've got the right leadership in place? Have you got proper composition in your leadership structures? Has your board been put together in such a way that you've got the right skills and the right experience and the right balance of those skills and the experiences? Because if you don't have the right skills and the right balance of experience, and if you're too heavily swayed in tilling the land, but not maybe having experience in maybe financial 101 or legal 101 matters, you can see how immediately your organization is going to come unstuck. So when we talk about an organization being sustainable, there's something that I like to refer to being the issues of double materiality. And that would be in basic terms to say, how do I as an organization with the leadership affect the so-called outside world? And how does the outside world affect me? Now, if I take that to another level of discussion, people would say, well, he's also talking about financial versus non-financial matters. And yes, I am. So when we talk about an organization being sustainable, you have to look to how good are you as the leadership, not only in the way in which you draft your strategy in terms of protecting the sustainability of the organization financially and non-financially. It goes to the next area to say, well, have I got proper bearing, proper effect on the environment outside the organization? And how does the environment outside the organization impact me? And how do I strategize around that to ensure ultimately that my business is being protected, that my business is safe from being harmed, that my business has a future, and that the people in my business have assurance that they're in a good place, that they have a job to go to, and that we are contributing to the economy, contributing to the country. So it's a very complex and a very deep discussion. If I talk environmental issues from the sustainability point of view, then we can take it to another kind of level of discussion and talk about the environmental, the social, and the governance issues, commonly known as the ESG. Now, the problem with the discussion on ESG, and I've lamented this for a number of years, is that if you're purporting that you are being environmentally and socially friendly to the people in and out of the organization, how can you make a claim that you're being ESG friendly, ESG aligned, if the governance of the organization within is defunct? In other words, your rules, your codes, your policies, your procedures, your compliance, we'll cover the compliance now, is not properly intact. It's not being properly reviewed. It's not being assessed. It's not being properly reported on. Indeed, many organizations don't even know if they are properly compliant to these areas of governance. Now, if you notice, I talk to the compliance of governance. In other words, governance sits right at the top. I think we need to understand the intent or the meaning of governance, the way it was originally given to us so many years ago. When we talk about the governance or governing the organization, we talk around the issues of how do we, as the leadership structures, both the board as well as management, direct and control. Now think about it. How do you direct and how do you control? It's not a question of waking up in the morning and saying, well, today I'm going to go and direct. It happens almost intuitively. You've got the strategic thinkers, which essentially I would argue would be your board members, the real top echelon leadership of the organization. And those would be the people that would put together the necessary strategy to ensuring the sustainability, if you will, the longevity, the profitability of the organization. Then on the other hand, you've got the more kind of operational type people, the CEO and below. And those would be the people that would enact the strategy, which has essentially been forthcoming from the board. Now, in the boardroom, we've got to make sure that that strategy is aligned to the memorandum of incorporation, to all the laws, the rules, and the regulations expected on our organizations in terms of legislation. If we talk about legislation in a typical organization in South Africa, there are roughly between 60 and 90 pieces of basic legislation that will apply to the average organization. You'd say not a chance. So if I give an example, the first thing is most of you in the agricultural sector, Agri Sector, would be having to comply with the Companies Act, the constitution of the country, no doubt, the Companies Act. If you're non-profit, then obviously other non-profit acts legislation come to the fore. And then as you start delving more and more into these particular pieces of legislation, you realize that there is an Air Quality Act, there is an Environmental Act, there are labor acts, labor is big in your particular industry sector, and multiple other acts of compliance. And don't forget, of course, the whole issue of FICA, which has become a big discussion in your particular environment, in your world, because you are also now part and parcel of being seen or regarded as an accountable institution. So when I talk about the accountable institutions, and probably and arguably the reason why the financial services sector and the insurance sector and the estate agent sector and all those kind of sectors have been more our top end clients, it's because things like FICA have really been top of mind for those boards of directors to ensure that they are compliant with one law called FICA, the Financial Intelligence Center Act. And of course, don't forget all the necessary amendments, which have been significantly changed in the last recent months. Of course, organizations like yours, lesser prominent, if I may put it that way, lesser prominent organizations, never ever in their wildest dream or imagination thought that FICA would become top prize for them or top priority. Well, every time you go and sell a prize bull or a prize cow, I'm not really a farmer, but I do know what happened at Pala Pala. And the fact of the matter is, if you're taking in cash over certain thresholds, those amounts of money have to be recorded and declared. And if you don't declare it, you're basically running foul of just one act, being the FICA Act. So when we talk about compliance and the sustainability of an organization, it is absolutely essential for the leadership structure of the organization to have some framework, let's call that a governing framework, that kind of puts all the top priorities in place for people to understand, leadership to understand, have they got the finger on the pulse of the business? And that's where your governance framework comes in. Let me start concluding, because I can see Francois there and he's probably giving me a cue. So you've got to have this governing framework in place, ideally digitized, so that every time you sit as a caucus of leaders, you know that you're talking around the key issues that will hurt the organization. You must know whether or not you're in the good or the bad zone. You must have the evidence to prove, to support what you have done in order to be compliant. And then, of course, you've got to put the necessary actions and controls in to ensure that when you are reporting, remember the King codes are very important from a reporting point of view, that you're absolutely able to report with honesty, with truthfulness, because if you don't and you get caught out, there are the unintended consequences. Let me wrap up quickly. Let me give you a couple of tips here. Firstly, check for the composition of your leadership, your board. Check that the board are properly being inducted, properly being trained, and that doesn't happen once a year. It happens at least twice a year when we talk about the induction and the orientation of the board, because it is so volatile. It's changing all the time. You can't go on training once and think you're okay. It's not going to happen. Rotate the members on your board so that you know that you've got fresh thinking coming in to the organization's leadership. Watch out for conflicts and for any form of conflict. There's so many, I don't have time, unfortunately, to discuss it or to unpack it. Watch for your codes and your policies and ensure that your codes and policies are up to date. Ensure that your codes and your policies are not conflicting with the strategy. Massive area people go wrong on, which means they then start acting what we call ultra vires. In other words, the strategy itself, you've gone on a Bosporot, you've designed this beautiful strategy, and then you find out that your strategy itself is actually illegal because it's conflicting with your inner management systems and inner documentation, your codes and your policies, let alone the law. Use the right tools. If you said to me, go and plow, go and till the land, and I didn't have proper equipment, there's no chance I'll even be a sustainable farmer, let alone profitable. So you've got to have the right tools. And on another occasion, I'd be delighted to sharing with you some of the tools that we give to organizations. So get the right tools in place. The leadership cannot do their job if they don't have the right tools in place. So, and then lastly, perhaps just make sure that you've got proper structures in the organization, that you actually know what the lines of authority are, including the delegations of authority. I think that's probably enough for me for the now. So when we talk about the sustainability of the organization, we're not necessarily talking ESG. We're not necessarily talking financial profitability and therefore you're sustainable. We're talking about the holistic way in which that organization is operating. All right, and I think that's perhaps enough for me for the time being.
Terry, thank you very much. That was really informative, and I think definitely we need to set up a session with more time to spend with you. And I think what's important, what came out for me, that it's this whole ecosystem in the organization that you need to manage, that you need to ensure the alignment to be effective and to be sustainable. Indeed. And to comply, because it's end of the day, it's about the sustainability is in terms of how you take a business forward. And if you don't have that alignment through the different policies and the documentation, something is going to go wrong, and you won't be able to continue. So
exactly correct.
So
and the rules are the same regardless of the nature of your business operation, from listed right the way down to non-profit. So the rules are the same.
No, thanks, Terry. Yeah, so we'll definitely set up another session, give you a proper time, but I think it gives very good context in terms of also the rest of the discussion. So next up is Francois Meintjes. Francois is an admitted advocate. Although his law degrees was obtained from a doubtful organization. Luckily we worked together from 1990 in a corporate and a legal division. So I know Francois well, so you can take it on the chin. But Francois has been with Moonstone, so as a compliance officer since 2005, so 19 years in the compliance industry, specifically looking and helping your institutions, businesses, broker practices to comply in terms of FICA and FACE. So playing predominantly, and that is where Moonstone is playing, but the focus is. But then we had a discussion, and Francois made me aware in terms of the obligation that's on accountable institutions, and what's the definition for that? For non-financial institutions. And that's actually where we from an Agri-X perspective, we picked it up and said, but let's discuss this, let's explore this, because the impact of that could be huge. And then I started to have discussions in the agri-industry and just realized in terms of that people are not aware of that. So, and this is part of the process. This webinar is to start to create that awareness and to build on that, and making sure that everybody is aware of the implications, but also aware of what are the solutions. Francois, welcome to you. Looking forward to your presentation. And I think it's a very important solution that's part of the package. And I'm grateful to Moonstone actually in agreeing, say, but if you look at non-financial institutions, look at the agri-industry, to come to the party and say, but actually we will give the support to the agri-industry. So Francois, over to you.
Thank you, Chris and Terry. On behalf of Moonstone Compliance, I wish to welcome everyone in the Agri Sector to this brief presentation on the implications of FICA for your business. Since the end of 2022, a high-value goods dealer is listed as an accountable institution. Now, what is an accountable institution? FICA defines an accountable institution as any person listed in Schedule 1 of FICA. Accountable institutions must fulfill certain obligations in terms of the FIC Act. For instance, registering with the FIC, training obligations, and having a risk management and compliance program in place. As the name implies, a high-value goods dealer in the agri sector includes any person who carries on the business of dealing in high-value goods and receives payment in any form to the value of 100,000 Rand or more. Payment may be made as a single payment or a number of payments that appears to be linked where the payment adds up to 100,000 Rand or more. So what are the requirements to qualify as a high-value goods dealer in the agri sector? And what may be regarded as high-value goods? A high-value goods dealer must be dealing in the buying or selling of high-value goods in the ordinary course of their business. This transaction can take place in retail or the wholesale sector. The high-value goods must be valued at 100,000 Rand or more, and very important, for a particular item. So selling a few separate items where the total combined value amounts to 100,000 Rand or more does not qualify as high-value goods transactions. High-value goods must also be a physical item, and this includes movable, immovable, and tangible items. This item can be a new item, second-hand, or an old item. Payment. Payment can be once off. With other words, only once off to the payment, or it can be a series of payments as long as this amount to 100,000 Rand or more. For example, you pay a deposit of 20,000 Rand and the 80,000 is paid at a later stage. Payment may also be made in any form. For example, cash, checks. Well, I don't know if you have checks any longer, but EFT, credit, debit card, or crypto payment. And then, very important, if credit is extended to the client, this business will also be regarded as an item 11 credit provider, as well as an item 20 high-value goods dealer item. Therefore, two separate registrations for the same business will then be required with the FIC. So now that you have assessed your agribusiness against these criteria and have determined that you are indeed a high-value goods dealer, what should be your next step? Registration as an accountable institution with the FIC. Coming at this point, just to provide a few practical examples of high-value goods dealers in the agri sector. Dealers in animals. So any person in the trading of livestock, game, and this includes game breeders, exotic animals, and exotic plants. Auctioneers in the buying and selling of high-value goods, where it is on behalf of a seller to the buyer. Once again, the auctioneer working in the agricultural sector. Trading platforms. Once again, remember, this must be part of your business where you are selling high-value goods on an electronic platform. All of us know, take a lot. But once again, if you've got a trading platform and dealing with agricultural items of more than 100,000 Rand, you will be regarded as a high-value goods dealer. And lastly, the buying and selling of any agricultural items, such as aircraft, helicopters, tractors, or any other equipment in the agricultural sector, as long as it is part of your normal business dealings. So what are the risks and requirements of being a high-value goods dealer? We have already touched on the requirements of what FIC said for all accountable institutions. But we will look now at the obligations of an high-value goods dealer in the agricultural sector in greater detail. As already explained earlier, The first obligation, when you realize that you are an accountable institution, is to register with the Financial Intelligence Center. Secondly, you must draft and implement a risk management and compliance program, or what we also call a RMCP, which will govern your specific duties and procedures in regard to money laundering and FICA duties. Thirdly, training is another very important obligation as stipulated in the FIC Act, and that includes training on FICA as well as RMCP training to your staff members. Fourthly, a FICA compliance officer must be appointed to ensure compliance with the FIC Act. As a high-value goods dealer, you must also do client due diligence every time when you sell high-value goods to a client. And lastly, all documents must be verified and kept for at least 5 years. While on this point, I think you will see after my presentation, Julie from Lemonaide will provide you with a solution regarding specifically verification of FICA documents. There are also quite a number of reporting duties, but that is a topic for another day. Non-compliance with any of the above obligations may result in FIC giving administrative sanctions and potential penalties for the high-value goods dealer. You will all agree with me that the previous slide was quite a mouthful for people whose main concern and interest is agriculture and not compliance. Fortunately, that is where Moonstone can come in with assistance. Our solution for businesses in the agri sector includes the following: a high-value goods dealer and FICA gap analysis to actually tell you what needs to be done, a review and assistance with the drafting of an RMCP, checking submission of the FIC risk compliance return questionnaire. The due date for high-value goods dealers was the 31st of July 2023. Also, preparation for any FIC compliance audit readiness, the developing and implementation of a FICA anti-money laundering framework, and last but not least, ongoing FICA compliance monitoring. The good news, all of you who are watching today, is that Moonstone, through AgriX, provides special rates for these services in the agri sector. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Francois, for setting that context and also providing the solution. You also, I think, created the entry for Julie to talk specifically around the verification process, and I believe a truly remarkable solution that's available for accountable institutions that must do verification. But Francois, thanks very much. for your contribution. Really appreciate and looking forward to build further on the relationship of Moonstone and the services it can offer to the agri sector. Julie Amley from Lemonaide, sharing effective ways how to address verification processes. Julie, I'm going to hand over to you for positioning Lemonaide beeswax in the solutions. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everybody. You've already been welcomed, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. And I think after the conversation that Francois has had with you, I can almost guarantee and see you all sitting with your hair or your hands in your hair going, oh my word, what else do we have to do? And I'm going to share my screen with you just to show you how the system is able to assist you to bring together everything that we have spoken about. So I hope everyone has got a visual on my screen. This is what the application looks like. And you will see that on the left-hand side, we've got all the different modules available to you. So if you are uploading a natural person, meaning a normal human being, or a legal person, which is a company, or a trust, or a partnership, or an employee, or a vendor, you're able to use the application, and that will then help and assist you to categorize all the different people that you engage with and that require fixed screening. So it's very simple to upload any information, and bear with me, I'm not going to go through all the detail and all the possibilities we have with regards to API integration into maybe you are using a system or you do have a client capture system in place. We can integrate with that. There's various ways of obtaining or getting the data into the system. So fear not, you don't have to use this as a standalone. You could, but you don't have to. There are ways of us getting the information into the system for you. All you need is a name, a surname, and an ID number. And on a company, you would need a company name and a registration number. What the system would do for you is it then runs against the requirements that are entered in your RMCP, and it will bring back results for you. So all you have to do as a user is insert the name, the surname, the ID number. The system in the background will do what it needs to do, and you only have to review the details. So instead of searching for any data, the system does that for you. I can purely analyze what my client would come out at when looking at his risk factors. So the tabs at the top would then allow you to have a look at specific detail. The ID verification would be a call that is returned back from the Department of Home Affairs. So based on the fact that I've inserted an ID number, it tells me that this ID number belongs to a person called Sandra Fourie. She is not dead, otherwise there would be a death date. So I know that the person I'm dealing with is alive, kicking, healthy, and good. If this photograph matches the person that you are dealing with, then you know you are good to go. Now, from a FIC compliance perspective, I have verified the identity against a golden source, which is Department of Home Affairs, looking at the ID of my client. So ID verification, done and dusted. I can then have a look at the screening results, and the basic requirement that is needed is to run a sanctions check against an individual, as well as whether or not they are politically exposed. You can do further searches. You can do a whole lot. We've got over 150 different searches which you can perform, and that would only be done when and if needed. The three basic searches you need is your ID, PEP, and sanctions. Now, I've clicked on the screening results tab. If I scroll down, it tells me that I've run Sandra against land claims. So if she were an owner of a farm, I would be able to see as to whether or not there's a land claim against her. Perhaps she's placed a claim against somebody else. That would also reflect under land claims. It tells me that it's negative. In other words, she's not involved in any land claim whatsoever. PEP, there it tells me she's negative. Political exposure. The beeswax application does not only look at direct PEPs, but if she were in business with a politically exposed person, if she were married to or a family member of a politically exposed person, that information will be returned to me and I would be able to see how is she connected to a PEP. So we don't only reflect or review or give direct PEPs, we also give PEP associates. Then you've got reputational exposure. I'm not going to go through all the different searches that we have, but as you can see, these are the searches that I've run against Sandra, and all of them are negative. In other words, she doesn't appear on any of those lists. So again, from a FIC perspective, I know that this client is not involved in anything that she shouldn't be involved in or anything that I should be aware of as an accountable institution. The risk assessment, we pre-populate for you, and this is based on your RMCP. So to date, we haven't found a competitor that aligns your RMCP in the same way or fashion as we do, which allows you to have different questions and answers related to the type of transaction that you're doing with the client, the dealing description of the client, as well as the amount of money that is involved with this particular individual. Each of those answers are all in the form of tick boxes or little drop downs. And as I said, we pre-populate this for you. So again, all I need to do is click on the risk assessment tab, review, make sure that the answers are correct, and apply my risk assessment. What that does is it will then combine the answers that were selected with a screening that was run. It gives me a score. So again, if we refer to the FIC Act, if you have a look at section 21A to H, it indicates that you need to have your client risk rated and you need to have the screening results done. I'm completed. I have done what I need to do. So my client has been verified, the screening's been run, the risk assessment has been applied, so it's aligned to my RMCP. My client's been risk rated. That risk rating will place my client in a risk type. This particular individual is medium, obviously not because of the screening, but perhaps answers that I have laid down in my risk assessment. And we categorize them. So there it shows me of all the natural persons that I have on my system, I have a population of 1,241 individuals. 54 of them are high risk, 11 are medium risk, and then I have 1,052 in a low risk category. So with the FIC walk through my door, I'm able to say, here we go, Mr. FIC. I have got so many high risk clients you selected. We've got various reporting tools on those. So you would be able to report on your high risk to say, well, of the 54 high risk clients, I've got 30 that are PEPs. I've got 12 that perhaps due to the risk assessment has been highlighted as high risk. So you have got full feedback and control over all the clients that you deal with. And I've spoken a lot, but to complete this process on a natural person takes no longer than 3 minutes. We are being used at most of your major banks as their onboarding system. We are used with car dealerships, group car dealerships. We are with Westbank Agri as well. They use it for the land claim particularly. So we have got quite a nice extensive footprint, and the system has proven to save a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of stress when and if the FIC does come knocking on your door. The same would apply to legal persons. The only difference here is you would upload a company name. We will automatically hit sub-C, return the data to you and say, for this company, these are the active directors, and the screening I've just shown you on Sandra would automatically have taken place on your active directors. So again, saving you time and effort in having to obtain information and data on particular individuals. With regards to employees, we've also incorporated your crim checks. We also do verifications using a barcode scanning device, and it's not an actual device. It is software that's implemented in our system. So would you have to screen your employees and you've got foreigners, you can upload their passports, their visa, their asylum seeker certificate. As long as we've got a visual on the barcode reader in the software will then return to you the validity of the document, the name and surname that should be on the document, and the photograph that should be displayed on the document. The system allows for you to save all information in your document library. So we've got a full document library system, which is a document management tool. So anything that you upload to the system in form of drag and drop would be saved in your document library. So for the first time, you have a fixed system that is going to keep all your data neat and tidy in one space on a platform, and all your ongoing searches would be related to the risk type, and it'll automatically run at intervals which we pick up off your RMCP. So that in a nutshell is what the application can do and how it can assist you in ensuring that you will be FIC compliant. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I think everybody will agree that it's truly remarkable, and it's going to save everybody that need to do the verification, save them time, and time is money, and it's a very simple, easy process. So thanks a lot for that and what you've done in terms of to develop that, and also the willingness to make it available for agri clients. I think it can make a huge difference, and we will continue the discussion around that. I want to position that some of the other solutions that from AgriX that we put together. So obviously we are continuously looking for solutions that's available that can help our clients in the agri sector. And today you've seen basically the client verification and the FICA compliance to address that. Then obviously from a HR/IR perspective, that's always a big challenge, can be very complicated if you don't have a proper system. So we have a solution around that. And then BE consulting, scorecard management, a challenge for many businesses is to make sure that we have somebody in place that can help and assist. From a human capital perspective, very important, the basis of any business. In terms of how you build that up, we have a business in a subsidiary of AgriX, and that's AgriX Talent, that focus basically on the human elements. And then the other big issue these days is data security. So for any business, it's a huge concern in terms of the data breaches that's taking place, data that's hacked, to have a proper system in place. So, what we basically have done is to get aligned businesses and service providers to give a one-step solution or entry point for our customers. And it is also at a preferential rate. So Lemonaide, Moonstone, you've seen today, and it's much more actually it can be done. From HR and IR perspective, we have the central operating governance system. Looking at those functionalities, it's online. It is using the latest technology, using cell phones to communicate, to have proper records of IR communication, or purely HR management functionalities. Kyra Corp is a firm of attorneys focusing on BEE and scorecard management. Human capital, I've already referred to AgriX Talent, and on data security. The important thing for us is that's all partners that we trust, that we can work with, and that we can introduce with confidence to our clients. So we will continue to look at it, and I think what Terry has done today, we will revisit that from a governance perspective. We will create opportunities to talk about the AR and HR, the BEE, the data security, those opportunities to share that. What Francois has done from a Moonstone perspective today is just touching the iceberg. And we've already set up a webinar, arranged a webinar on the 13th of November that will be hosted by Moonstone, where they actually will look more in detail around the compliance requirements, what are the solutions, and also how it can affect employees, where Andrea de Jong will also play a part. So we will communicate that information. It will also be available on the AgriX website. And you can expect going forward to get invitations to similar type of webinars where we will share valuable information to help you in your business.